Welcome to Study Skills for Self-Directed Learners. Over here is a QR code that will bring you to our LFP Landscape page on Facebook. Right? As mentioned, the skills that I'll be sharing are generic for every student. There is no, it doesn't meet any particular needs. Be generally for all students' needs who need, one, to save time studying, and two, to help improve their recall strength. There's no need to take photograph, or the video is being recorded. I believe you can watch it again, but there's no need to take any screenshot or photograph on the screen, as with access to the Miro links, you can simply download some of the images. And when we get to those images, I will show you how you can do that. But first, before I begin sharing about study skills, let us first think about what is self-directed learning. A quick search on the internet could present you with an image such as this, a kind of concept map of what self-directed learning is. And there are quite a bit of resources that you can find. But one of the definition that I like based from self-directedlearning.com is the idea that in self-directed learning, the individual takes the initiative and the responsibility for what occurs. Individuals select, manage, and assess their own learning activities, which can be pursued at any time, any place, through any means, at any age. It is based on this understanding of self-directed learning that we have worked towards ensuring that our study skills or techniques are simple to learn, do not have more than 5 steps, can be easily used with just a pencil and paper and some form of timing. And we have tried our best to make it even possible for students at a younger age to start with. Currently now we offer our programs for students that start from primary 3 onwards, given after we have relooked at the whole thing and provide a light version. But however, self-directed learning is not new. It seems to be new because today we find that students have this struggle of being self-directed. The idea of autodidacticism is the act of self-directed learning. This is how people make discovery in the past. In the past, where there was no form of formal learning or schooling like we have today, how then did these explorers and discoverers in the past came about developing and growing their knowledge? One of these inclination or predisposition could be the idea of autodidactism, or the idea of the self-learner being self-directed. So what we see here from what I've observed is that self-directed learning is not new. And the idea of self-directedness itself, as I shared with my friend here, Hairi, recently, is that it is a natural form of curiosity among the young, where they go out and pursue. It is the experience in life that somehow make them less self-directed because of certain inhibitions imposed, or because the environment doesn't encourage that level of self-directedness. And this talk is meant to share something that I believe in, is that at times we have observed that students struggle to be self-directed because they don't know how to, not because they don't want to, but they don't know how to. And one of my background is, one of my first career, I started off with as a regular in the Singapore Armed Forces. That was where my first scholarship was from. So, and it always amazes me that, in the army, we could train a civilian into a soldier within 3 months that is slowly, wholly focusing on skills. And that is the approach that I've taken in terms of study skills development. The idea that hopefully, if we could impart students with study skills, they will be able, be able to pursue what they want because they have the skills. It is also interesting to note that when we go out to work, there's a lot of support given for us to gain skills to work. For example, we have a skill future with a lot of skills training budget given to us. If we are, and that is how we're able to go and work, because we are supported with skills training. But if you look at our children who are students studying for at least 12, 14, 16 years, what skills have they gained? Who is supporting them in building those skills for them to study? And hence, since 1998, I have been trying to find ways to help students, one, not be self-directed, and two, not to be reliant on private tuition, which is today can be quite costly for most families. So before I begin, and for those who are in the board, I would like to invite you to share very quickly what you think are study skills. So I would like to bring everyone who was on board here to come to this part and share what you think are study skills. And for this, we will just take a quick 5 minutes to see what those who are on the board could come up with, or you could share, on the chat, and maybe some of our moderators and volunteers could help post it onto the Miro board. Yeah, just need to double click. Yeah, drag it and double click it and share what are study skills. What are study skills to you? What have you been using? What techniques, what skills, preparing for exams or doing your homework or preparing for school? What are the things that you have done? How do you prepare yourself? It's good to see people coming in to share what they thought it is. Yes, mind maps. Maybe I could put that in. Okay. Yeah. In. You know, when we do this with students and we do this parents, we always do not find a matching set of what they think study skills are. And that seems to be some of the tensions that we have learned, that the imagination of what studying is, that is in the mind of our children, and the imagination of what studying is in the mind of us parents. At times, the tension comes when they are not the same. One of a very interesting sharing that one of the very interesting sharing that I always have during this talk is a few years ago when we were doing this workshop in a primary school, and during this activity of asking them what are study skills, right? We came upon a student who wrote, "I pretend to be reading so that my mother thinks I'm studying." So we find it quite amusing because the time the boy spent pretending to be reading, he could actually have done the reading itself, right? And that's where we realize that he doesn't know how to read in the way that will help in his studying. So one of the skills we shared with him was optimized reading, that allows him to read and then reflect on and capture what he has read in a draft notes. So at times it'd be good if you, one of the first thing that you could do actually with your child is to ask them what is studying to them, what do they do when they're studying, so that would actually reduce the tension of the imagination that we have as parents, and what our children have in their minds. We have a few more seconds. Thank you so much for the numerous sharing, writing down notes, talking to friends, and repeating information, writing down notes. So we see quite a number of note takers here, a number of those who use mind maps or some form of memory skills, using flashcards or some form of memory trigger, right? Goal setting. Thank you. So we have about a few more seconds. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the sharing, and it gives us a good idea of what is the idea of studying among all of you here. When I started to embark on this in 1998, it was after I graduated from NUS, and it was in the second year NUS that I started to wonder if only I known the skills that I have now earlier, I could have performed much better. So in 1998, I started my journey just simply asking the question, is there an alternative to private tuition? As mentioned in my introduction, I've been involved in more than 20 years in youth development, in basically community development or community services with a youth group called Malay Youth Literary Association. And we noticed that one of the things that kind of disadvantage low-income families is that they are not able to afford the increasing cost of tuition. So in 1998, I started to embark on this journey, asking this question, is there an alternative? Is there a way where students can study on their own and not relying on private tuition or help? And if that happens, they are able to reduce the cost and need for tuition. And if you look at the background here, these are just some of the books that I have that relates to study skills or learning skills that I've gathered over the years. And one book that kind of really pushed me into this field is this book by Luckie and Smethurst, entitled Study Power, Study Skills to Improve Your Learning and Your Grades. The book was written by former Harvard professors who were tasked to investigate why is it that some Harvard first-year students are struggling to study. What are they lacking? And through their investigation, they found that these students lack a number of study skills and hence published this book. One of the things that we still carry on from this book is the idea that study skills can be divided into three types. You have the input skills, you have the process skills, and you have the output skills. And it is the division or the distinction made between this type of skills that makes it a bit clearer as to why students who are studying but yet struggling in some of the areas and not performing as expected, because some students could have very strong input skills, very strong process skills, but do not have the output skills to perform well in the exams. Some students could have the output skills to perform well in the exams, but because there isn't enough information that they were able to carry on with them due to lack of input and process skills, they struggle. So it is a situation where they realize that, hey, I could have answered that. I know it's not that difficult, but nothing comes out of my head. So the idea of this category of studying like a system helps us to quickly identify, for example, when we work with students, to focus on the type of study skills that they lack in. So if they are weak in the input skills, we work on the input skills. If they're weak in the process skills, we work on that, and so forth. And hence we have adopted these this typology of study skills and put that as part of our study skills inventory, a way for students to see if they have enough input skills, if they have enough output skills, or in process skills or output skills. So for example, based on the sharing earlier, we could see that, goal setting will go into the process skills, how to process information will go into here, and so forth. And when we do this exercise with our students, we tend to see where they are strong, where their strengths are, which type of skills are they strong in, and then which type of skills are they weak in. And hence, instead of harping on them, let's say if a student is very strong in process skill, instead of harping on them saying, no, you're studying wrongly, we are now to be able to look at it objectively and say, well, you're strong in process skills, you have them, but let's work on your input skills, or let's work on your output skills. And this way, we help to reduce some of the tensions that may arise out of a misunderstanding of what each of us as parents or children have about study skills. Okay, so in the event that you would want to download any of the images here, all you have to do is click onto the image, and here you have a download button. So that is why I said there's no need to screen capture or take down notes. If you want, simply click on any image that you like and then download the image onto your devices. Okay, so from learning a lot about study skills from various authors, various researchers, and especially from Smethurst and Luckie, I did in 2017 to map out the flow of what is the best way to introduce study skills to students, especially those who have embarked on their adolescence year and can be a bit stubborn in the sense that they want to have their own sense of self and wanting to have ownership of what they do. And through this creating a kind of a skill tree and web, if those who play games, you find this familiar in a lot of RPG games. I like to play RPG games as well, so I'm quite influenced by the way they structure the skills development. And from there, I look at just a simple scenario of what are the skills that students need before a lesson, what are the skills that they need after a lesson, during a lesson, and then after a lesson, what do they need before a test or exam, and what can they do after a test or exam in order to prepare them for the next year or the next milestone exams in their schooling journey. And here we did a few touch points to show that when students apply all the various different variety of study skills, they would have quite a sizable number of touch points. And when we look at the theory behind spaced repetition, where they are recommended to keep on, having that space, repeating, revisiting a similar topic to help them improve their recall, we do that by giving them a range of different types of skills and techniques so that they don't get bored. One of the things that we learn when we work with students is that they can get bored with the same monotonous technique. But with 22 essential study skills, when they are paced out accordingly, looking at the different momentum and demands of each phase in their academic year, they would use different techniques. But at the end of the whole string of application, they would have enough touch points to provide for the recommended spaced repetition. And it is with this that we came up with the 22 essential study skills that look at what are the skills that can be done before a lesson, during a lesson, after a lesson. So we have this set in green, which we call the Jumpstart set. Usually we work this with students at the start or before the start of the school year. Now in December is a good time to do this. We found that students who apply these skills and are able to read at least two chapters before they are being discussed in class have a higher inclination to get better grades. Okay, the only thing we would like to point out is that getting better grades is just a natural progression of mastering good study skills effectively. But if having just study skills alone do not guarantee the good grades, but it's a habituation, the mastery, and the consistency in doing them that could naturally lead to good grades. And the one in red are our strategic studying. Usually we would start offering to students from July, from April onwards, actually, to prepare for those who have mid-year exams, where they will learn recall techniques, practice techniques, review of work to check on their work, and a way to monitor themselves. And at this point, I would like to share with you 2 daily tasks something that you can begin to do with your children, and for those of you who are attending here on your own as a student, something that you can begin to do. And the first thing that has always been encouraged by a lot of study skills book is that the idea of doing a preview or a skim. Okay, a previewing is where you look at, having a broad overview of a subject, whereas a skim requires you to read bits and pieces here and there. However, what we have done is we have combined these two techniques that are often promoted separately, and to make it in such a way that students could, students who are studying in Singapore using our textbook could do it in 3 minutes for primary 4 and below, and within 5 minutes for primary 5 and above. And as I said, this study skills that is based a lot on the study skills book that and research that I've done tend to be based on what students at university needs. So what we have done is trying to see what are those skills that students need at the university, and then dilute it down to as early as possible. This is, again, as I've shared earlier, part of my motivation that comes with the question, if only I had known these study skills earlier, I could have done or managed my studying much better. So what does the preview and skim method entails? First, we suggest to use tags, right? Post-it tags to tag the start and end page. Indirectly, it will kind of give you an idea of how many pages that you need to preview and skim. Second, when you preview and skim, you just need to look at titles, subtitles, headings, text, subheadings, and so forth, right? Bold words, right? Maps, diagrams, charts, and I think maps, diagrams, charts, and any images that you may see in the diagram. Later, I will show how that happens. And the rate, the interesting thing about it, it has to be done at a rate of 3 to 8 seconds per page. Any more, and it will satiate, you will provide too much information. Any less, it doesn't give you enough information. But between 3 to 8 seconds, what we have encountered with students is that they develop some level of curiosity, and that is something that we want to work on, right? So after completing the page, they take a piece of post-it, just write 5 things that they have learned about the chapter they have previewed or skimmed. So this is meant for a chapter, and based on our textbook chapter, it can be done within 3 to 5 minutes based on the 3 to 8 seconds per page. When students write the 5 things that they have learned from the chapter, it is not designed to be tested or to be audited, right? It is not designed to be tested or to be audited. What it does is that it helps the students see what they capture most. So they start to begin to learn about how they work with information. So it doesn't matter what are the things that we don't do. We don't evaluate the 5 points that they have done. We don't say this is wrong, this is image. It is up to the students to decide what is the 5 things that they've captured, and then they will build up that skills. Over time, they will start to learn what to pick up, what relevant information to pick up as they venture further into the topic. Remember, this is just a preview and skim. This is just like the trailer that we have before we watch a movie. It doesn't give everything, but it gives you some idea of what the plot is going to be, who are the main characters, right? Imagine going to a movie that is not, especially those epic movie, and you don't have a trailer. You go in, you get very confused because there are so many characters. You don't have an idea of what the storyline is unless you're familiar with the adaptation from a book or volumes of book. Otherwise, it can be very confusing. Hence, the much more complex the movie is, the more different kinds of trailer we have, so that it fits us just enough information to be curious about the story, yet not enough to say that we no longer need to watch the movie. Okay, and if you notice, when we make the students write down the 5 points, it becomes evidence. And one of the reasons why we design our study skills and technique this way is that to prevent dispute. So when a parent asks, so have you studied, the child could say, yeah, I've done my preview and scheme, and these are the 5 points I found, right? So when the student goes to studying, if a parent really wants to seriously follow up to improve the way they do their preview and scheme, is to ask the child, so has that 5 points that you identified helped you to understand the chapter further in class? If it doesn't, then for this child to be encouraged to look at the chapter again and to see what have I missed out. And hopefully in the next preview and scheme of the chapter, the child will be much more attentive to see what it picks up. And one thing we learned about habituating study skills to students is that we need a lot of patience. We really need a lot of patience to help them habituate, to encourage that they pick up the skill. This is an example of the page. So for example, in this page, a student just need to look at the title, maybe some key ideas here, pictures and diagrams. And even in the example of this picture, they don't need to know the details. As long as they know that there is this picture of two children with their grandparents, perhaps in the garden, talking about something. And that is all they need to know, right? They don't have to go into detail, because this is not a reading technique. This is a preview and scheme technique where to prepare them before they want to read everything or before they attend a lesson in class. Again, for those of you who are here on Miro-board, if you want to download this image, for example, just, okay, for here, it's a slide image, so we may not be able to download, but for images like this, yeah, there's a download button here that you can download. So you can actually download this page here that we have given, and this is actually an extract from our workbook. Okay, so yeah, so I hope that helps respond some of the questions. And then when we go, same thing, look at bold words and look at the summary. And this is where at times, because our textbooks are so well designed in Singapore, that the summaries, there are a lot of summaries in the textbook, that we discourage students to look at it straight away. We only give them about the last few seconds in the 3 minutes or 5 minutes time frame to look at this summary, because the summary do help them to structure the information a bit more, right? But there are students who after a while would just go to the summary and look at it, and it doesn't help them to look. They may have missed out certain images that could actually provide a very strong trigger for subsequent recall. Okay, so I will just pause here for a moment to let all of you digest this preview and scheme technique. Okay, digest this preview and scheme technique. Yeah, in case you have any questions, you can just pull out a post-it here and paste it onto the technique. Then I could respond to you. Okay, so this is the first task. And when we were doing it at the primary school, we learned that a student, you know, after the session where we shared with the student, we do it weekly. We do a format of 6 sessions over 6 weeks over at the MOE primary school. That one of the student, you know, proudly stood up to share that she improved her grades when she started to do the preview and scheme. And again, you know, we would like to establish that it is not the preview and scheme that help her, but the idea of how, you know, when students, you know, do preview and scheme, they have some idea of what the topic is. And because they have some idea of what the topic is, they will not be afraid to look at the teacher. They will not be afraid to look at the teacher. No, because usually students don't look at the teacher because they're afraid to be asked, right? So when they know some information, they will look up, they don't look down. And when they look up, they actually improve their hearing posture. And when they improve their hearing posture, they are able to pick up make full use of the time in class, pick up the information, and then hopefully it stays with them, and that is how they get much more further motivated to want to continue, you know, engaging the materials and listening better in class. So this is one of the ways that we help students improve their grades, not directly, but indirectly. Preview and Skim does help in them helping to improve their listening posture because they are no longer afraid to be asked a question. Right, so before lesson is the preview and Skim. And usually I suggest students and parents, you know, students, if they have to wait in the early in the morning for their parents to get ready to send them, or they have been sent to school early and they have to wait for the school time to you know, when they have 3 to 5 minutes and they have their textbook with them, that is the time that they can do it. Or they can just do it before they sleep the night before. It's just 3 to 5 minutes, a quick technique done. You know, I always joke that ask for your parents for instant noodles or some instant food that can be ready in 5 minutes, and while waiting you would have completed a preview and Skim for one chapter. So that is the first task that we can do to help students prepare for lesson. Now the second task is after lesson. What are the things that students can do that is very easy to pick up is the daily reflection and review. So on this page here, you see a very simple way. When we start off with students, this is the first skill that we can actually teach any child. I started to teach daily reflection and review when my girls are very young. Now my girls are 24, 21, and 16, is that I will have daily conversations with them, asking them what was exciting today, you know, what did you do for recess? So these are things that will excite them. And then, you know, being the parent, I will ask, what did you do before recess in class? So that earlier initial excitement can easily help them remember the, you know, associated tasks that they learn before or after the recess, okay, or the break or the activity. So it can start off with a conversation, but if you're working with a child who has never done this before and they're at the level where it's not properly habituated, what we usually do with students that we work with is that we provide them with a little notebook like this. That is, little notebook like this, or any small notebook where they will write just 3 things they learn from any subjects that they learn for the day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be assessed, evaluated, whether the 3 things they put there are correct or not. It is, the whole process is just to make them habitually think through what they have done, reflect on it. So in the first stage, they could just list what they have done. The second stage, they could add in things like, what I think of the thing I learned, will it be useful to me? How am I going, if I don't understand this, who am I going to ask for help? But that comes later. But what we have established is the idea that at the end of each day, the student will spend 3 to 5 minutes just thinking through the 3 things that they have learned for each subject they have learned on that day. So for students that we work with, usually we hand them a small little notebook, but over time, as more students and children have their own devices, what we do is that we just tell them to, okay, you have a device. Do you use WhatsApp or any texting app? If you do, okay, every day just text me what you have learned for each subject on that day. So again, like I said, in order to encourage self-directedness, it should be able to be done everywhere, anywhere. Make it easy, either through pencil and pen or any devices that they have. And with a student care center that we have worked with, we have even encouraged them to do away with the writing. Just put a camera device there, and the child will just come in and record through the video talking, okay, what do I do today? And just share what they have. And then, you know, the facilitator or the parent can later take a look at it and understand their child better as they share and they review and reflect on what they have done for the day. So the platform is not material. The idea is the habit of thinking through what they have done for the day. If you look at the tasks, you know, as long, and these are the first 2 tasks that we tend to work with students and want them to habituate. One prepares them, the other consolidate their learning for the day with the hope that what they learn will stick better, right? So this is the first 2 tasks. Again, you can download here, right? And now we go back to share about you know, our range of study skills. So we've done that. And remember the definition of self-directed learning, in which the student need to be able to select, manage, and assess their own learning. So one of the things that we begin is definitely helping them to select what they should learn. And this, we introduce the topic inventory checklist. And it can be done quite simply, where they look at the topic from the content page of their textbook, okay? And mark by pencil at the left or right, a star if they have very good understanding, a tick if they have good understanding, meaning most of the time they could understand and respond to questions from the topic. But once in a while, with a very difficult questions, they may struggle with that. That is a tick. And the wave, just like the wave, neither here nor there, is where students sometimes can, sometimes cannot handle questions or understand fully that topic. A question mark means most of the time they struggle, but once in a while, they could engage materials in a topic that is a question mark, and for a cross is totally, they have no clue whatsoever about what the topic is. And one of our ways in which we approach students is to do this is to encourage them to do self-evaluation, self-assessment, and also select what should they study next. And our recommendation has been always go for the wave topics. Okay, so once go from the wave topics to the tick, so you know, you increase the amount of things they're good at, and then if you want better grade, then you move it to a star. Only when you're satisfied with the amount of ticks and star, then you look at the cross and the question marks together. So the whole idea here, even if a lot of parents ask, can my child who is in primary school do this? I said, yes, they can do that, but they may not have the thinking, the thinking process behind it, but nevertheless, they begin to have this habit of self-evaluating. Some parents will ask, how accurate can they be? I say, it doesn't matter. Over time, they will learn. When they put it as a star and later on, they realize they are not as good as they think they are, they can lower it down. And over time, what we're helping them to do is to hone and refine their self-evaluation skill, their way of estimating how much and what they can do. From here, then aside from choosing the topic, we also give them 22 essential study skills, but it doesn't mean that they have to do everything. Quite a number of our students on average, they use at most 2 to 3 or even 3 to 4 of the 22 skills, ones that they can, they are very comfortable with, and it adapts to the way they study and how they want to study, right? So they are able to select the technique that they want to use for the studying that they have to do. And this is where we introduce the TTT, or the topic, technique, and timing, right? All of our skills can be achieved. Most of our skills can be completed within 30 minutes. Earlier on, we shared with you the preview and scheme that took at most 3 to 5 minutes. So this is where they can select from a whole range of skills here, right? To decide on what they want to use to study a particular topic. Then in terms of manage, we guide them on doing a weekly schedule. And our approach to designing weekly schedule is not so much for them to fill up as much as they can, because we tell them a timetable or schedule that is very beautiful and very nicely packed, but it's not useful to them. It's just decoration or nice to look at. However, we do give them warning about the need to have empty spaces in their schedule, so that if anything they could not accomplish because they are not well or they need a longer time, they have time to do that. Okay. However, how we use the weekly schedule is that we tend to give students, we tend to give students about 6 round stickers for them to paste in this workbook of theirs, where each round sticker represents a 30-minute study time. So they can choose to study a maximum of 1.5 hours. And here, when we mention studying a week of recommended studying of 3 hours a week, does not include the homework that they do. And we don't push students to immediately start off with 3 hours a week. We usually tell them, let's start off with just incorporating half an hour of additional study time using some of the techniques that we have shared, to begin the habituation process. And after they're comfortable with that half an hour, add another half an hour and so forth until they have 6 slots of half an hour each to cover 6 topics with whatever technique that they choose to, because almost all our techniques can be completed within 30 minutes. Then we have the 72 hours window that makes them be aware of how anxiety, nutrition, energy, and rest come into play when they prepare for exams. And once they know this, especially for students who are attempting for their milestone exams like PSLE, GCE, and so forth, we will craft for them the 98-day plan where they can strategically decide which topic to do on which day. And once when the 98 day starts is where it is as though there are aircraft that is preparing to take off flight, and this is the runway, right? So that is how we help students to manage the studying by a number of, activity management that is based on time. Again, we don't use time management because we believe that we can't manage time. We can only have timeliness and manage the activity within specified duration of time. The last approach in terms of helping self-directed learners, if we refer again to the, let me just hold it there. Okay, if we refer again to the definition of self-directed learning, right? Okay, that I shared here again, to select, manage, and assess. The last one is to assess. And one of the things that we help students assess is this tool that we have called review of work. Okay, all right. You just have to click the device. You don't have to move it. You just have to click it. Let me just lock it in. And then you can download the image here. Okay, so what the students do is that whenever they receive a test paper, or a textbook, right? Or sorry, a test paper and exam, and they get it back, or prelim paper and they get it back, what they do is to first appreciate themselves, look at the strengths that they have, all the correct answers they have gotten, feel happy about that, update their TIC on the topics that they do well with, and so forth. Then they begin to tag using a post-it tag like this, right? Yeah, post-it tag like this. And usually we encourage them to use strips of post-its, and then to tag every question that they get wrong or did not get the full answer. Okay, once they have tagged it, they go back to look at the question and they need to write what is the question number. Okay, what is the topic they think that question comes from? Okay, right? And then how many marks that they are allocated, and the marks actually lead to some strategy formulation later on. But importantly, they put the questions and the topic number. So after they have listed that thing, the QTM on the piece of paper, they have this, they just take a piece of A4 paper, divide it into 4 parts, and then start to reflect on the question. And this is where we encourage students to reflect on something that they have done and to also review it, to review and reflect on it. So let's say they take a piece of post-it and say, okay, why didn't I get this answer correct? Is it because I don't know the answer? Or is it because I couldn't recall the answer or don't understand the question? Or is it because I don't know what to write? It's somewhere there in my head, but I just don't know what to write and how to write the answer. Or it could be just, careless. So they will start to put all the various post-its there, putting all the question numbers and so forth. And this is where it becomes important for us, because the strategy to assist student in each quadrant is different, right? In quadrant 1, if students have a lot of the questions or that comes in quadrant 1, means they need to work on their input skills. Okay, those in quadrant 2 need to work on their process skills. And those that falls in quadrant 3 need to operate on need to work on the output skills. So a lot of us, for example, have been using the same old strategy of keep doing assessment book. Assessment book mainly looks at the output skills, what to write and how to answer them. So if your child is actually having struggle with input and process skills in quadrant 1 and 2, and you're forcing them to do skills that are related to quadrant 3, you are not solving their problem. Okay, it does not help them. What they need is to develop that quadrant 1 skills and 2 and so forth, right? So then ask, what about quadrant 4? Because in reality, they are careless. They could be careless because they don't have enough information, so they are just guessing. They could be careless because they can't recall properly, right? They don't understand the question, and then they are careless. It could go into 2. So usually those topics, questions that appear in 4, we will guide them to ask what is really the underlying problem that caused their carelessness. And once we know, we work on where most of the topic are and deliver. So you and deliver the correct type of skills to the students. So for example, if one topic means that they need all 3 skills, then we need to work them with all 3 skills. So the strategy applied to revise or revisit every topic different, is different, right? So this is one way in which we have students to develop the ability to assess. Another range is definitely involve our range of reflection tools. We have the daily review and reflection. We have the CRI or the cry. We tell students don't cry CRY. Instead, we do a CRI cry. And this CRI cry is that we make them go through a reflection of what are the challenges that they face in studying, right? Which tends to be touching more on the objective sense of what are their challenges, so they see it. Second is we want them to also appreciate that emotional link to something they have done. So we ask them, what are your regrets, right? And then lastly, we want them to look ahead and say, what do you want to improve in? And after they have done that, what we do is that we try to link to make sure that the thing that they want to improve in will also help them to avoid the regrets and overcome the challenges. And we have students who have lists of improve that doesn't make connections with what they have faced as challenge or regrets. And then that is where all this while they want to improve, yes, but they still face the same challenge. They still face the same regrets because there is no structured way of doing that reflection and linking the areas that they want to improve on in terms of the challenges they face and the regrets that they are feeling. So when we put challenge and regret is to put both the objective and subjective or emotional review and reflection into what they have done and projecting it ahead for the future, right? Our weekly review, yeah, at the end of the week, when they do the daily review and reflection, there's no evaluation. At the end of the week, students can go through what they have written down and start to reflect which topic is okay, which topic I will need help with, and that is where they spend their weekend to craft ways or asking their parents for help. Last year, actually, last year, I think early this, I think last year, we introduced the term review. Right? It was something new. We wanted students to see how much of the learning that they have done for the term sticks with them at the end of the term, right? And when they were reflecting, that is where we realized that they could have 8 applications to their reflection. One is the first application that we managed to see from their reflection is to see at their first layer of recall, what can they remember? So we are looking at their mind space. How much can they hold based on that one term of learning and not telling them to memorize anything? How much can they recall? How much can they hold? It is not to evaluate how good or bad their memory is, but just to understand how much of that learning sticks and how much to build up from there. That is where second part, we look at what are the gaps, right? And the third part is to understand, one of the things that I wanted to do this with the student is to understand whether or not the amount of effort that they do commensurate with the output that they get. So this is where our EO equation comes in, the effort and the outcome. So we will talk to them, how much effort they put in, and this is the outcome that they get. How then can we push them to make sure your E is less than your outcome, right? This is the aim of our study techniques. The fourth application is we want to see how they remember things, whether is it very random or linear. And for this, and when they're doing the term review, we will observe them and see how they do their recall, whether is it one, they write down a word and then it continues with a chain of information, or they put very random sporadic spots around a piece of A3 paper, what they can remember, right? And from there, we can understand them better and help them, you know, consolidate their recall strength such that they know where to focus. The fifth one is we ask them the emotional link. You know, we ask them to write emojis on each topic that they have recalled. Are they happy about it, angry, not happy? So we want to understand, because, you know, students, they have emotional link with the topic they learn. Sometimes it's because of the teacher, sometimes because of the environment of the class. And that emotional tie-up will link to the topic. So when they hit the same topic, this memory of the emotion they felt while learning it could come. So we put this emotional link so that we can understand them better and see how we can help them detach the emotion or give them much more positive experience in learning that topic, so that negative emotional link can be detached and replaced with a positive one. For students who take many languages, for example, a lot of the students we work with you know, in the madrasas who learn 3 languages, the English, their mother tongue, and Arabic. So we wanted to know what is their dominant thinking language, and for all students as well, because we are, you know, we are bilingual. So are we thinking in English on our mother tongue, and to see if that becomes an inhibition or a struggle for them, right? 7, to see whether or not they're able to link the topics together, where after looking at this, we will ask them to try to link topics together to see they're able to do that. And lastly, we want them to give their own notes to self, you know, putting on the chart, telling notes to self in the form of, hey, you, if you are looking this 3 weeks later, please remember to do this. So those kind of note to self. So when they look at their term review again, they have all these reminders of what they should be doing. And this is how we help students to develop the skill to assess. And with that, I end my sharing for today, right? Okay. Sharing for today. And I will look at the questions that we have. Right. Hairi, if you help me remove, yeah, thank you. Right. So, see if there's any other questions that you have. Let's see if I could respond to some of these questions that are already there, right? If not, maybe I get friends here from Unlocking ADHD to come in, or even my colleague who is double hatting today, Hairi, who's our lead facilitator at LFP Landscape, as well as a volunteer for Unlocking ADHD. Okay, how to reduce fidgeting and improve focus when doing work or revising. From my own kids, what I do if they like to handle something with the hands, my youngest, I bought for her very small things that she could hold on to whenever she needs something to hold. For my second daughter, you know, she gets fidgety after doing one sum. So one of the things that I work with her is that after completing one question of the homework, take a walk around the house until you feel you're ready to do the next one. And I added a timing such that, you know, over time, she reduced the need to walk around and find ways where, you know, she had require lesser time to stop her fidgeting. But fidgeting is not totally out of place in learning. I've understood that, you know, some of us need to move around a lot in order to release certain kind of chemicals in our body to aid in our learning, right? So when my second daughter was showing that, I make her move around the house to aid in that full body movement rather than just fidgeting over being seated, right? By the time she hits the A level, she could sit down for long hours to study and focus. So tips and focus on longer periods of time. I usually start very small. I've worked with a P4 student who could only focus on his work for 1 minute. By the end of the year, we managed to push it to 4 minutes. And also I shared the strategy of every 1 minute, have a break of 1 to 2 minutes, and then get on with 1 minute of work. In that sense, even in a test environment, for half an hour, you will have at least about 10 minutes out of half an hour, rather than just 1 minute after that, the student doesn't know what to do. So we always start small and build up from them, encouraging them with every small steps. How to motivate a child to be careful and less careless in exams? Yeah, there are checking methods. There are ways. One of the techniques we introduced to students called the GTR circuit, where they incorporate, you know, the checking time inside. Yeah, so at times, from my experience in working with students, it's actually can be quite specific to an individual to understand what are those things that they are likely to miss out or be careless about, right? So I can't share a very general strategy, because most of the time, the best way to help students who tend to be chronically careless is to really understand how they look at things. Okay. Yes, you can apply to a lot. If you look at the studying, these are studying skills. Studying skills form part of a learning skills. This is where anything you learn new, you can apply these techniques that we have when you have materials to read and work on. Even when it's online, you can just do a very quick preview and scheme, and then before you start reading the whole material. So how did I answer that? Yeah.
Surya.
Yeah.
Hi, Surya. I'd like to ask if you'd like to add on to the question. So there is a question in the chat, and it says how to get the engine started. So linking to this fidgeting and, you know, keeping still and long enough to concentrate, how to get engine started. So the person says that some of us can practice avoidance because we are feeling overwhelmed.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you.
If you read some suggestion of preventing procrastination or getting the engine started, there's something called the 10 minutes rule. Try to do anything for 10 minutes, and naturally, if you're able to do it for up to 10 minutes, you can likely go on. But over time, I have learned, I mean, personally, how I kept my engine going is to understand my anxieties. Personally, I have been diagnosed with clinical depression and panic disorder in 2001. And in spite of that condition, I've been able to further my studies and, you know, start to build a business and work on these things like study skills, because I understood the drive to start anything with anxiety. So whenever I feel that I don't want to start anything, I tend to reflect on, say, what am I anxious about? What is my fear? Am I able to deal with that? I will move it forward. And it's the same process that I do with my own kids. Every time when I notice that they're not starting something, I will ask them, what are you anxious about? What is disturbing you? What are you uncomfortable about that is stopping you from doing what you know, what you need to do? And often when that anxiety is being resolved, they can usually be much more inclined to start what they needed to start. Hence, to me, I've always seen procrastination or not having the engine has a lot to do with our level of anxiety. And that is my own personal take on it, right? Another way is that we design our 2 entry points into the jumpstart and strategic studying with 2 very simple techniques. So for the jumpstart, we have the preview and scheme that 3 to 8 seconds per page, 5 things that they have learned, no pressure to put on what the 5 things are. When the entry into the strategic studying is a 3 to 5 minutes instant recall, what we just do with students is that give you a piece of blank paper. This is a topic that I want you to recall. Just write and draw anything that you can recall out of the topic. It's fine. No judgment, no evaluation. And then from there, okay, so this is what you can recall. And then we look at the material. This is what else you need to build on to what you already have. But what is important is to acknowledge what they have done. And from there, once they see that, hey, 3 minutes, I do something, the next step is just 5 minutes. And from 5 minutes, they go into the half an hour techniques, right? And even the half an hour techniques, it is not one activity that is the same throughout the half an hour. We have different types of activity within the half an hour, such that, for example, optimized reading is a technique where they do preview and scheme. So if they've done the preview and scheme, they just need to read the 5 points. Then they start reading, they start reading for about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, they close the book and then they take a piece of paper. They just recall what they can for 5 minutes, and then they carry on reading again for 5 minutes until about 5 minutes remainder towards the end, for 25 minutes. And then after that, the last 25 minutes, they just see what are the things they missed out from the chapter and put it into that piece of paper, and voila, they have a draft notes. And when we do that with students, and when we congratulate them at the end that they have draft note, they already have a draft note, they are surprised because they could not imagine that in half an hour of reading they could have a draft note. So this kind of help them do that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I actually have, I would like to read out a question from the audience. Yeah. Surya?
Yeah, hold on. I'm just
Yeah.
activating,
Okay.
preventing someone from going in yet because I think
Okay.
there's a bit chaos on the board. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Take your time. When you are ready, I'd like to read out a question from the chat. Yeah. So this is from Irene. She asked, how do we deal with sheer carelessness? Is it due to a lack? Is it not due to a lack of input? So she says that she noticed carelessness is mainly in subjects which require working, so like math and science, where you need to do working. So she gives some examples. For example, the question reads 66, but when the student transfers it to another section, it becomes like another number, or missing out whole pages, or swapping numbers from 6223 plus and minus, that kind of thing. So she says that after quite a bit of nagging, the child says the questions are simple and doesn't require working, or finally after the working is being transferred over, it's wrong, but the child said that they have checked and cannot find any mistakes. So it is not due to a lack of ability, because the child can do like math Olympiad questions but still lose general marks due to carelessness. So how would you suggest to help this child?
Okay. On the screen here, I share our 12 instruments of clarifying understanding. So the 22 essential study skills are designed to help students achieve two things. One, to save time studying because the techniques are very short and the output is quite reasonable and adequate. Two, it helps them improve recall strength because applying the techniques across a certain time frame help to ensure spaced repetition. And the variety of our recall techniques help students to gradually build confidence, mainly confidence in the ability to recall. So that is the essential study skills. For the student that you have described, what we will work with them is more of our advanced skills. Our advanced skills comprise of two sets of skills. One is those subject-specific skills pertaining to specific subjects, whether studying for maths, science, history, literature, geography, D&T and so forth, or even art. And the second set of advanced study skills is what you see here on the screen. Yeah, can you see on the screen?
No, you're not sharing your screen. Yeah. Okay, now you
to see on to the screen where you have the 12 instruments of clarifying understanding. One of the things when we work with students on what we call clarifying the understanding is to assess their three layers of understanding. First is their perceptual layer. When we work with students that has been described in this way, we will first work with what do they see in both on the piece of paper and what do they see in their mind. So we write it down and we slowly try to understand their cognitive process. Then we move on to how they process the information, what they think and how is it connected to other information that they have, and hence the 12 instruments: comparing information, backtracking, connecting, expanding or extending, isolating, reducing. So these are various instruments that we teach students at the advanced level. And the last one is again their articulation layer. While they may have corrected their perceptual, they may have corrected their cognitive semantic to be able to learn what they need to. The last layer is we work with them on their way to articulate. And for this, we require a bit more time with students, and it is very unique to each student, and hence it forms part of our advanced study skills and not part of our essential study skills. So I hope that answer your question, but there is help that can be afforded to students in such a situation.
Thank you very much. We have another question, and this was answered in the Q&A, but I thought I'd bring it up too. It's also my question actually. Will these 3 to 8 seconds preview and scheme technique also work for larger chunks of information like college textbooks or 400 pages worth of university theory books to read? How would you like suggest cutting up the information maybe into somewhat more bite-sized pieces?
Oh yeah, because for books like I know
Thanks.
for university level, they don't have the kind of textbook that we have, right? The preview and skim comes into reading the first paragraph, okay, reading the topic sentence for every subsequent paragraph or even the section headings that you have, and reading the conclusion to provide for an idea of what the topic is about. Yeah. So and for those of you who are at university level or polytechnic or reading research papers, personally I just zoom into the findings, know what are the rough methodologies that give me an idea before, which is always contained within the abstract. So I think if you're looking at existing papers that are published in journals and so forth, the abstract itself provide that preview and scheme that you need, right? And then before you read, then I will look at the main paper and just look at the headings until the end before I start reading the details. Because I already have a good idea of what the sections are about, I could actually zoom into very specific areas that attracted my attention, right? The preview and scheme is designed for university students, and I make it simplified it into this way such that even primary students could adopt that habit. But of course, when we work with students in from A level in polytechnic and two, we ask them for their materials that they need to look at and adjust accordingly, right?
Another question that popped up is what happens, so preview and scheme, I understand as far as I understand that it's like pre-teaching of the material, like before we really start going in depth. But what happens if we need to like study for an exam, like maybe any last minute study tips that parents can do or assist their children with?
Okay, for exams, when preparing for exams, we usually recommend our range of recall techniques. Maybe I will share the screen again. Change of recall techniques that we see here, right, on the screen, more on the strategic studying. Our recall techniques, one of the main techniques called recall mapping, where they are able to map what is their recall strength based on information that they need. We have the other that is becoming more popular with students, if we call it the instant recall sprints. What they do is that decide on 3 to 4 topics to recall, then give 5 minutes each and then see what is it that they can remember. The whole idea is to show them where the gaps are so that in their preparation for the exams, they can focus on the gaps rather than having to learn everything. And that is our approach on how we help students to save time, right? Even encourage students to, no, you don't have to miss your holidays because you have exams. All you need is paper and pen and a list of titles that you may want to recall. So even when my girls we were going holidays before this current period, as long as the paper and pen, rest time, I will just ask them to do an instant recall or recall mapping just to see where their gaps are. And then when they come back, just to fill up those gaps with further studying. And with this approach, they know exactly what they need to look at. Rather, most of the time students struggle because in their mind, they're so overwhelmed. We have to learn everything again. But with our recall exercises, where we just ask them to do an instant recall, 5 minutes, what you can remember, they can see for themselves what they recall and can see for themselves what they have missed, and they can just focus on those gaps. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you very much. So from the perspective of a teacher, one thing that my students often tell me is that they don't really have time to pre-read stuff because they are so busy doing yesterday's work. So do you have any specific tips both for us as educators as well as for any students who are listening in here, how they could like maybe minimize distractions, which I think is one of the biggest problems why they cannot and we cannot concentrate long enough to finish a task?
Okay. This is actually shared by one of the teachers. Now, so far we've only served one MOE school, primary school. Then one of the teachers, after we do it for 3 years, start to incorporate those techniques into her class itself. So one of the things she adopt is the preview and scheme, because it takes at most, it can be 3 minutes to 5 minutes. So just 3 minutes to 5 minutes, knowing that some students don't have time to prepare before the start of the lesson, everybody does the preview and scheme. So that actually kind of trigger their mind and to know what they're going to expect for the lesson. And she found that just introducing that start of the lesson before she introduced the topic, where she shared students how to do the preview and skim. It helps in her actually delivering the lesson, because from the 5 points that students write, she can start to ask, okay, what are the 5 points you have? What are the 5 points you have? Gather and then carry on the lesson based on the kind of information that she has gathered from her group of students herself. Yeah, so preview and skim can be done. Of course, if the students want to do preview and skim beforehand, that is also possible because it's 3 to 5 minutes.
Thank you. So at this point of time, we encourage, if you're in the call, you can also maybe write down one thing you learned today from today's session in the chat, so we can practice you know, the techniques that Surya has been saying. We can practice it live and do some active recall, yeah, and write down one thing that we learned today in the chat, which might help somebody else if it doesn't really help you too. Okay, Surya, we have one question in the chat. I'll read it out if you are good.
Yeah, maybe I missed it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. For a child who has ADHD, executive functioning may be affected to a certain extent. So after enrolling in this program, would it be sufficient? Or would you recommend the child to perhaps continue therapy with an educational therapist?
Okay, the program that we have is mainly to impart to students study skills. We don't deal with the clinical or the medical side of any learning difficulties or challenges that students face. So what we usually do, like the example of the student that we help to increase the attention from 1 to 4 minutes, it was not as, we did not approach it because we are working with a student with learning difficulties, but we approach it with a thinking of, that's the baseline of the student, and we see how best we can help the students to get better. And that is the reason why we use the technique of facilitation, because when we apply learning facilitation, the whole principle behind it is look at each student's baseline individually, no judgment from where they are, we build up to where they want to be. And it's important for them to share where they want to be, so we can give them to chart their progress accordingly. So when we receive the student who could only pay like 1 minute of attention, we know the student is struggling with some form of attention issues. But while we encourage the parent to go for medical help, they were quite reluctant. But nevertheless, we took the child in our charge and we work from their baseline, and the child's baseline was 1 minute. So we think of ways to increase from 1 minute to 2 minutes, from 2 minutes to 3 minutes, and 3 minutes to 4 minutes. Towards the end, because we have only 1 year, 10 months with the student, at the end, before he graduated from our 10 months program, that he was able to pay attention for at least 4 minutes. To us, that is a progress that we are able to see, and importantly share with the parents that it's better to let your child do something 4 minutes and then take a break 2 minutes and then followed by another 4 minutes and 2 minutes, so that in 1 hour you have a substantial amount of time. Then after 4 minutes, you struggle with it and you start scolding and all the tension come up. And at the end, for that 1 hour, the child is only being able to work on that 4 minutes that he or she has initially. So part of our work also involves talking and working with parents. But again, I would like to emphasize, we are not trained on the clinical or medical aspect of any learning difficulty or challenges. We are just there to facilitate students' learning as best as we can based on the tools and instruments that we have. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And perhaps we take one last question.
Okay.
But before that, I'd just like to, yeah, Surya, people have learned quite a lot today. Some people, Martin says that he learned that previewing and skimming can be done in 3 to 5 minutes. Sarah also said that, and Charmaine says, I've learned I don't need to sit there for hours to learn something. All it takes
definitely
is a few minutes
yeah.
to doing it the right way to pick up on my weakness. Nidhi says, dividing information in chunks and mastering one skill at a time rather than getting stressed and dropping it at the end. So yeah, there are many different things to learn. Eunice says, by practicing the right study skill, we will not feel overwhelmed. And I think there are many other very useful things. So if you need a TLDR, too long didn't read version of it, I think you can read the chat. It's pretty good information consolidation. Okay, one last question from the Q&A section, and then over to Moonlake. Last one says, Nidhi asks how to create and retain interest in difficult topics for children.
Okay. Where's the question?
It's in the answered column in Q&A, the second column that says, yeah.
Why? I don't
It's
see
right at the
that.
bottom.
Why?
Okay,
I don't see that.
okay,
Oh,
I'll
okay.
paste it for you. Yeah, do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, how to create and retain interest in difficult topics for children.
How to create and retain interest in difficult topics for children. Our strategy will always, I will help them to find what could be interesting in that difficult topics, right? And I would tend to understand them better to leverage on what they like. So one of our students that we work with, she likes to embellish her notes with drawings of little dragons and other figures, you know. So we saw her doodling that. So we advise her, why don't you each time you work on this while you're creating the notes and learning, draw your dragons, or find a dragon that fits your emotional link to this topic, right? So when she's not happy with the topic, she draw a fairy dragon and so forth. And we try to understand her love for dragons by asking what she reads and try to use that often to create the kind of analogy or metaphors that we need in order to help her understand the topic. So one of the ways that we always approach in helping students retain or create interest in difficult topics is to first find out what is it that interests them. And then we facilitate the bridge of understanding by using analogies and metaphors to help them see the similarities. Another student I have likes theater a lot, and she was studying social studies, which she found quite difficult, doesn't retain her interest. So what I suggested to her, why don't you think of a performance in which the countries that you're reading with are just characters fighting with each other. So the characteristic of the nation is being reflected as a character and the activities that they do with one another. And when she does that, she sees social studies in a very different light and could capture the difficult and complex issues that she was initially not able to understand when she was just reading it plainly. So, and that comes in the process of learning facilitation. And that is beyond the study skills, generic study skills that you see here. The study skills here are just meant, as I mentioned again, to help save study time and improve recall strength. Anything beyond that, we use our arsenal of learning facilitation toolbox to help students in whatever way that we can.
Thank you very much. I like the dragons a lot. Yeah. All right. I would just like to encourage you all to click the link in the chat that says feedback form link, and do us a favor. If today's session has helped you and you learn stuff, maybe you'd like to click it and fill up the form. It would really help us to improve and to know what other things you would like to have answered. If we didn't get to your questions, maybe we can answer them the next time. Yeah, so let us know what you want to see and anything else that you would like us to know. Thank you very much for attending. I'll pass the time now to Moon Lake for any other business. Thank you so Surya.
Much. Yes, thank you so much, Esther. Great job moderating and good questions as well. And really happy to see some of the response and feedback in the chat. Surya, thank you. A lot of good information. I think we also need time to digest it. It's great. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to highlight as well, sometimes emotions also get in the way of our studying, right? So, besides the technical skills that Surya was sharing, when we've exhausted all the technical, we should also try and consider whether there's emotional issues at play. Just to share with you, one of my daughters, at one point, she was actually like missing out whole pages of questions. And sometimes that resulted in like 20% lower marks, right? Than she could have had. And then the question is, how could you miss one whole page, or one whole section? And it's such a pity because actually they knew the information, right? But it was a difference between an A and a C, let's say, right? And then when we investigated further, again, it wasn't a content knowledge or even a technique, but it was actually emotional, right? It was anxiety. So being able to address the anxiety, knowing what triggered and, finding ways like, breathe, mindfulness, those kind of things actually help to reduce those oops moments, because those are avoidable, right? But it's really understanding what's underlying. So that's another thing I just wanted to share, to consider, again, whether it's an emotional issue, or in some cases, actually, it could be executive functioning or even ADHD or dyslexia. So there's a couple of different learning challenges When you've tried all other ways, do consider those two so that we can really play detective and really maximize our child's learning. I would like to share screen. For those of you who missed it earlier, you can use the your scan, the QR code, to scan the QR code here. This is the presentation that Surya had earlier. So you can go in there and download it. And again, it'll be available for the next 7 days. So please feel free to go in there. The other thing I would like to also share is unlocking ADHD. Right now, we are the most comprehensive site for information on ADHD in Singapore. So if you need to find out more information about understanding ADHD, how to live better with ADHD, or to connect to the community, please go to our website. Some people have actually asked us how they can get in touch with you, Surya, if they want to find out more. So after I finish this, I'll return the screen to you so that you can share more information about that. We do have a community on Discord and on Facebook. So please, again, scan the QR codes so that we can keep in touch, support each other, because for those who are parents here, you will find other parents maybe experiencing something similar, and we can share best practices. And for those of you who are students, you will also find a student community there, whether it's secondary school or university, who also will understand what you're going through right now. So remember, we have an event December 23rd, Wednesday, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and it's a youth for youth event. We're getting Ruth Lim, who is an esports coach, gamer, to come and share with you about the psychology of gaming. It's going to be a very special event, so please scan this and register. And we will also have youth gamers who will be on the panel along with Ruth and our moderator, Andrea, to chat about games and everything related to gaming, answer your questions. And for those of you who are at our session, you know what, it's going to be interactive. It's going to be different. So you can also come and share your own experience. We want to hear it. We want these conversations. Okay. I will just remind everyone again, please scan the QR code here for the feedback form. We would love to find out, what you found useful about this, how we can improve, and what other things that you'd like to see. You can again find us on our social media, and I would like to pass the time back to Surya just to share his contact information before I take it back again.
Yeah, thank you, Moonlight. So here we have our QR code that will bring you to our Facebook page, LFP Landscapes, and from there you can put your questions and we will respond as soon as we can. The other thing is that we have provided an offer for our workshops. You can scan the QR code here. So they are $30 off for P5 and above, $20 off for our P3 to 4, and part of proceeds will go to help support UA activities. So this is the offer that we have for today. So if you want to contact us, you can just scan the QR code here that will bring you to our LFP Landscapes Facebook page. And from there, you can ask us questions and we can respond to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya. Yeah, in case you guys weren't sure what UA is, it's a short form for unlocking ADHD, and Surya has graciously agreed to use some of the proceeds. If any of you decide that you find the study skills interesting and would be beneficial to your children, or as a youth you would like to sign up, would be happy to support unlocking ADHD's activities to continue providing programs that are practical and useful for the community. So thank you very much for the generosity, Surya. Yeah. And again, he did give a special discount for anyone that's here today that came in through unlocking ADHD to get a better rate from his usual rates. So that's also like everyone wins kind of thing. Thank you for joining us today. We wish you a blessed Sunday and a very wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. And we hope to see you on December the 22nd at 8 p.m. Okay, keep in touch, everyone. Have a nice Sunday. Take care.